It arrived unceremoniously in the mailbox, an envelope so pristine it resembled a relic from a forgotten time. Handwritten, the neat script immediately caught my eye, the ink still fresh and dark against the stark white paper. I could hardly breathe as I held it, tracing the curves of the letters with the tips of my fingers. It was real, undeniably real, an invitation to her wedding. My chest tight, a jagged reminder of the love that once filled our lives and the jagged edges left in its wake. The delicate weight of the envelope felt heavier than the sum of its parts. It wasn't merely a piece of stationery. It was a blast from the past, a living embodiment of everything we had shared and lost. I wanted desperately to pretend it was something else, to throw it away and distance myself from the memories that would inevitably flood my mind like an unyielding tide. The bell tolling in the distance seemed to echo my dilemma, shifting between haunting and beckoning. Back then, nothing seemed insurmountable. Our laughter danced in the air long into the night, igniting dreams that felt tangible just within reach. I could still hear the way she said my name, the lilting accents softening the edges of my world. I remember how her eyes sparkled like stars when she talked about the future we'd build together. As I stood there, staring at the invitation, it was as if I had been thrown into a different life altogether, one where I had loved and lost, believing too readily in an unwavering love that had, in an instant, crumbled like so many delicate sands beneath the relentless waves of betrayal. I opened the envelope carefully, afraid to disturb the fragile slice of my past contained within. It felt surreal, as if I were peeling away layers of my own heart that had long since healed over. The card within was thick, embossed with elegant designs that spoke of good taste and undeniable excitement. Reading the meticulously crafted words, the date, the venue, the promise of forever, it all felt like a mockery of our own promises, a cruel twist of fate that left me gasping. I could see her in white, radiant and ethereal, basking in the love of someone else. The image twisted in my chest, a dagger slicing through the remnants of my once indomitable spirit. Did she think of me when she decided to send this? Or was I just another name to fill the space, a mere nod to a past that somehow still lingered? Anger threatened to bubble to the surface, an instinctual response to the hurt woven into my memories. But disappointment was far heavier, settling into the recesses of my thoughts, smothering any flicker of rage. Within those delicate lines of calligraphy lay the betrayal that had changed everything. How cruelly poetic it was, the face of love and yet the face of loss. I wanted to rally against it, to tear the invitation to shreds and let the pieces fall into the unforgiving wind like the shambles of my dreams. But instead I found myself clutching it, packing around my small apartment as the walls seemed to close in around me. Nostalgia swirled with resentment like a deadly cocktail, the darker side of memory rising to meet the light. I could still feel the ache of her absence, sharp enough to cut, shadowed by the remnants of affection that lingered stubbornly despite everything. Could I bear to attend, to witness the precipice of her new life? Each step toward that decision felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm filled with hurt and uncertainty. My instincts screamed to withdraw, to hide, and let those moments of vulnerability pass me by unnoticed. Yet another voice, quieter yet unyielding, urged me to step forward. Perhaps it was foolishness that guided me, an overinflated hope, or perhaps a misguided sense of loyalty. I could almost hear my own heart thudding against my ribs as I weighed my options, hovering on the fulcrum between yearning and self-preservation. There, amidst the tangle of emotions, a sense of responsibility began to make its claim. After all, I was the best man. It was a title I had never sought but would now have to bear. For better or worse, I was tied to her story, bound by promises tangentially linked to my own, demanding my presence even when every nerve in my body screamed to flee. Resigned, I sank into the couch, where dreams once flourished only to wilt under the weight of reality's heavy hand. The shadows of our past lingered, drawing me back to moments I thought I had left far behind. Memories washed over me, blurring the lines between love and anguish until I could discern no clear path. Through the labyrinth of my feelings, it hurt to flash back to the laughter we shared in our favorite cafe, the moments spent getting lost in each other's eyes, defining our very beings. What had changed? Where had those simple, untainted days gone? As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the room in hues of desolation, I understood this invitation was not merely a request for my presence. It was an ultimatum, a reminder that the past had to be faced. I could not shy away from the corners where regret lingered. I would have to confront them directly. The invitation sat tauntingly on the coffee table, a legacy of what might have been and what now belonged to someone else. Slowly, I pushed my fingers into the paper, feeling its cool texture, and asked myself, could I face her, not just as the best man, but as the ghost of what we once were? The invitation may have been a blast from the past, but it would also become a pivotal moment, a chance to step from the shadows of heartache into the light of healing. I had a choice now, to hide away in the wreckage of memories or to muster the courage to see her, to see them, and to finally let that chapter close. As I stood outside the venue, an unyielding wave of memories crashed over me, relentless and unforgiving, echoing the laughter we shared in carefree moments that now felt like a cruel taunt. I could almost hear her voice, light and playful, as it melded with the warm scent of summer, reminding me of the lazy afternoons spent sprawled on the grass, making daisy chains and dreaming of a future where nothing could tear us apart. Those times, so idyllic, felt so distant now, like photographs fading in the sun. Each step toward the entrance stirred images buried deep within. She had always been a tempest, wild and uncontainable, a force of nature that drew me in with an intensity I couldn't resist. I recalled the wild nights, the raucous laughter shared over cheap wine and missed midnight trains that culminated in stolen kisses beneath a canopy of stars. It was as if the universe conspired to create memories that shimmered with a kind of beauty that, in hindsight, I recognized as ephemeral. I could still feel the warmth of her hand slipping into mine, reassuring yet electric, every gesture laden with promises that in the end lay unfulfilled. Then came the heavy yet intoxicating moments, her head resting on my shoulder, eyes sprawling into the horizon, filled with dreams whispered under the blanket of twilight. I remember how we would lay there, contemplating the future, both naive and hopeful, believing we were invincible. I was struck anew by the realization of how quickly we learned the fragility of love, how everything we built turned to ash the moment trust wavered and secrets became daggers dipped in poison. It was a slow disintegration, each betrayal seeping into the fabric of our relationship until only remnants of what once was remained. I recalled the first time I sensed the cracks, subtle yet jarring, like a dropped glass that shatters more than just its surface. Her laughter turned too often into nervous silence, her smiles held an unfamiliar distance, and the warmth in her eyes began to flicker like a candle struggling against a draft. My heart ached with the confusion of love caught in a storm. I wanted to reach out, to pull her close and weather the turmoil, but she withdrew, slipping further away, and suddenly I was left grasping at shadows. Then came the late nights filled with arguments right after pleasant evenings, and days spent in a muted haze, each of us fighting our demons in solitude while physically we pretended everything was fine. It was during this descent into chaos that I began to see the glimmers of deceit, the messages that flashed on her phone, the fleeting glances she couldn't disguise, the way she flinched at my touch as if I had burned her. I gripped tightly to the consensus that love was enough, that loyalty could drown out the sins brewing beneath the surface. I fought valiantly against that reality, even as the truth began to surface, choking every ounce of love that once thrummed in my heart. This wedding was a bitter reminder that beyond the hurt, she found someone who could fill the void, who could offer her comfort in ways I couldn't, who saw her beauty unspoiled by the shadows of past transgressions. I wanted to scream at the irony of it all. Here I was, the best man to a woman who had once been my everything, and now I stood on the precipice of anguish as the memories of our dreams caved into a chasm of regret. I felt like I had been cast in a tragic play, forever forced to wear the mask of joy while I ached from the pain buried beneath. As I walked through the venue, the laughter and the strains of triumphant love songs seeped into my bones, drowning out reason with an unbearable nostalgia. Every corner of the hall bore witness to our fragmented history, to the promises exchanged, and the hopes that lay shattered. I could see her there, radiant in white, a vision of happiness, yet in my heart I knew it was painted over the cracks of a faulty foundation. Did he understand the depths of her past, the vulnerability she cloaked in smiles, or was he blissfully ignorant, wrapped in the fantasy we once created for ourselves? Every fragment of our shared history flashed through my mind, those moments of both pure joy and unwrought pain. We had navigated the winding paths of young love with all the fervor of star-crossed lovers, never once realizing the path would lead us to destruction. The taste of her kisses lingered on my lips like a haunting, bittersweet specter, reminding me of the fleeting essence of a love that once felt so invincible, imploding right before me. I visualized the times we had promised to be each other's forever, contracts written in innocent whispers, only to find our signatures marred by tears and the sharp edge of betrayal. Then there were the stories of jealousy that erupted like unexpected flames, her friendships that shifted from supportive to suspicious, my insecurities rising like tidal waves. I had tried to buoy her drowning spirit, but with each attempt, she slipped through my fingers, wanting to be saved while simultaneously resenting the lifeline I offered. And finally, the demons of distrust overcame us both, poisoning the love I thought could withstand everything, teaching me that not all battles are fought with valiant hearts. Some yield only to the agony of rejection and the slow erosion of trust. Yet among these painful recollections, interwinged like the threads of a delicate tapestry, were glimmers of what we created in the depths of our connection. The adventures that stretched far beyond the realm of usual milestones, the moments we danced in the rain without a care for the world, the secrets shared beneath heavy breaths, the intimacy of souls intertwining without pretense. These were the memories I carried within me, though they're now marred by the shadows of betrayal. My thoughts spiraled back to the present as laughter erupted through the hall, yanking me from my reverie. I felt the emptiness sink deeper into my bones, a heavy weight cloaked in grief for a love lost but never forgotten. The struggle to reconcile what she had been to me with what she had become to him was where I found myself trapped, suspended in time, as I braced myself for the inevitable as I journeyed deeper into the heart of this event. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a slanted golden light that seeped through the heavy curtains of my small hotel room. I stood by the window, the city sprawling beneath me like a tapestry woven with memories and dreams, each thread pulling me gently back to a past I thought I had left behind. Tomorrow I would watch her marry someone else, and yet here I was, wrestling with the curls of doubt that seemed to swell in my chest with each passing moment. The day had dawned with a crispness that felt strangely ominous. I had spent the hours prior in an obligatory buzz of activity, reviewing speeches, gathering thoughts, but my mind was a battlefield clashing with what I felt versus what I had been coerced to accept. I thought being her best man would be an honor, a testament to our shared history, but now it felt more like a shackle, binding me to a reality I was desperate to escape. I recalled every shared glance, every brush of her hand against mine, and the fierce laughter that ripped through the tension of our late-night talks. We were young and reckless then, tumbles of energy and hope, enamored with life and unaware of the impending storm just on the horizon. And now, as I stared into that sunset, I could almost hear echoes of whispered promises ricocheting off the walls of my heart. A cruel reminder of intimacy that felt wonderfully intoxicating yet devastatingly fleeting. Beneath the surface of my memories lay a creeping sense of betrayal. I had stood by her when she was claiming the mantle of love. Now I found myself bound to a future that included him. The man who distracted her with charm, who held her hand in the shadows of our last good nights, who swept her off her feet while I cradled the remnants of what we once were. It gnawed at me. Would she walk down that aisle thinking of me? In fleeting moments I envisioned her turning back, her eyes meeting mine with the same warmth that once ushered in spring, only now marred by the chill of isolation and choices gone awry. Even as I drafted my speech, an amalgamation of humor and nostalgia, a tribute loaded with care, my heart writhed in rebellious tension. What was I meant to say? To conjure up wit while standing in the presence of a love that had sifted through my fingers like sand. Each word I penned felt like an arrow dipped in the poison of doubt, aimed precisely at the vulnerable flesh of my own heart. Across the street, the church where they would wed loomed like a fortress, its spire piercing the deepening violet sky. An edifice of promises embraced in stone, fortified by vows that felt more like a decree. She had dreamed of this day, the white dress cascading like a waterfall down her back, the flowers she always adored, each petal a token of love spun into existence. I thought back to the nights we shared crafting fairy tales and anguish twisted in my gut. I had hoped I'd receive an invitation to her happiest chapter, but now I felt more like a ghost, exiled to a realm of yesterday with no role in her shining tomorrow. A brief ringing broke the heavy silence, the sound of my phone vibrating against the wooden desk so hard it threatened to leap off. A message illuminated the screen. It was from her. "Can't wait for tomorrow. It means so much to have you by my side." The words leaped out at me with a sharp poignancy, and in that moment time fractured, memories collided with hopes, and each beat of my heart echoed a painful truth. I was her best man, yes, but beneath that title lay the raw essence of unreciprocated love, lingering like the last note of a haunting melody that refuses to fade. I let my phone drop to the table, letting it skitter across the polished surface before it fell silent, much like my own resolve. Part of me wished fervently for some cosmic intervention, to feel that pang of fate swing in my favor. Could a twist of fortune reveal that perhaps in the grand story of us her heart wavered still? And yet reality, cold and unyielding, seeped in. Those words held no guide toward a bridge that hadn't already burned. I was a ghost to her now, tethered only by reminiscence and lingering affection. The doubt grew unwieldy, each thought rooted deeper in the ground of what-ifs. What if in moments of vulnerability she remembered us? What if I chose to step forward, to disrupt the immaculate plan intended to entrap her in an amalgam of fabricated happiness? Surely I still meant something, didn't I? Perhaps there was a way to shake off the dust of the past. A whisper to remind her of the laughter we shared, the tears we accepted, the dreams we painted together under a celestial canopy. But as I wrestled with my own mind, I knew there was no easy answer. The truth laid heavy at my feet. Tomorrow's rituals would act as the final punctuation to a chapter I was reluctant to close, but I had to ask myself, could I let her walk away free? In the mirror, I caught my own reflection. A man caught between loyalty and the flickering embers of a past that refused to be extinguished. Could I truly fulfill my duty, or would the weight of my silence amount to complicity in a lie? In that dim hotel room, I stood poised on the precipice of regret and acceptance, my mind screaming for resolution amidst the delicate strands of tomorrow looming unmercifully closer. With every breath, I tried to chart the depths of my heart, seeking clarity, knowing full well that sometimes love isn't enough to save you from the consequences of the choices we make. The air was thick with anticipation, a simmering tension that felt palpable to everyone who had gathered under the grand oak arch adorned with flowers that once brightly symbolized love. The day had morphed into something unrecognizable, an event meant to celebrate union overshadowed by the haunting shadows of unfulfilled promises. As I stood at the altar, the weight of the ring in my pocket felt like a loaded gun ready to go off in a moment of chaos. I could hear the murmur of guests' laughter bubbling at the surface, but underneath there lurked a current of anxiety. The music began, a soft melody weaving through the air, resonating with the fragments of my heart. There she was, the bride, my ex-girlfriend, radiant in a gown that was both breathtaking and agonizing. Her smile, wide and bright, flickered nervously as she stepped into the clearing, uncertain yet resolute in her stride. She was beautiful, a vision spinning memories of us together. I felt a familiar pang in my chest, longing mixed with bitterness. The laughter I had once taken for granted was now a weighty reminder of a love lost, only to be replaced by a facade of joy draped over a montage of broken dreams. As she approached, our eyes locked in an unspoken dialogue filled with echoes of the past. Undeniably, there was an intensity there, a flicker of recognition that we were both tethered by the shared history of our love story, one that had unraveled thread by thread. What had once been a tapestry of passion and devotion now hung limply in threads of betrayal and unworthiness. The illusion of the day, adorned with twinkling fairy lights and white drapery, felt starkly different from the reality that loomed in the spaces between us. She reached the altar, and I could see the edges of her smile crinkle slightly, as if masking a deeper uncertainty. All around us, the guests were smiling, glasses clinking with muted jubilation, but this was not our celebration. It was hers, a revelation I was forcibly reminded of with each heartbeat that echoed in my ears. I was supposed to be her best man, the faithful friend celebrating her happiness and loving commitment. In this moment, however, all I seemed to harbor were unanswered questions. The officiant delivered the opening remarks, his voice a distant echo while I wrestled with the storm brewing inside me. My mind replayed the memories of breakup late at night, discussions that spiraled into arguments, my own silent scream as she walked away, leaving a gaping void. And yet here I stood, bound to honor her in a ceremony that felt increasingly hollow. Have you truly moved on? I thought, wishing for clarity in the confusion swirling around, my role as mediator of her happiness emerging as thorns in my heart. As the vows commenced, she spoke words that felt both beautiful and untruthful, a poetic expression of a lifelong journey shared with someone else. The imagery she conjured was laced with an ache I recognized well. Love is both ethereal and a burden, binding us in its celebration while poignantly reminding us of our failures. I caught glances from friends, supportive and expectant, yet unable to perceive the battle fought behind my smile. Her words dripped with sincerity, yet all I could hear were the whispers of our unfinished narratives unraveling in the background. When it was time for me to deliver my speech, I approached the microphone, hand trembling slightly, my body a chasm of conflicting emotions. I could feel the weight of their gazes, some brimming with optimism, others driven by inquisitiveness toward the underlying tempest beneath my surface. I couldn't shake the feeling that every moment was judged by the reverberations of my hidden grief. As I opened my mouth to speak, my voice wavered, longing to encapsulate a reality fraught with contradictions. We've all gathered here today to celebrate a union. My voice seemed loud against the hum of rustling conversations as I struggled to persist. A union that many of us view as a fairy tale, but somewhere buried under this skin of joy I feel the shadow of loss. The silence that ensued was thick, heavy like a fog enveloping the room. Eyes turned and the bridal party glanced over, surprise lacing their features. I could feel the heat rising to my face, a torrent of self-doubt crashing like waves against a fattening shore. I have shared incredible moments with her, I continued, digging deep for strength. She taught me about love in a way I had never known. But love is complicated and heartbreak lingers in the silence between touched hearts. The air turned electric, the guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats while the officiant glanced at me, an unspoken inquiry flashing in his eyes. I could tell he found my honesty disconcerting. I could see her now, standing frozen, her face flushed but composed, battling her own storm beneath the surface. It was then that I realized that love wasn't perfect. It was a mosaic of beauty and conflict where every piece told a story of joy overshadowed by pain. I could no longer deny the truth, nor could I ignore the festering wounds I had carried since she chose another. With a final glance toward her, I swallowed hard, my voice resolute. I stand here today wishing nothing but happiness for her, but I cannot ignore what has simmered silently within. We were a story that deserved a different ending. I stepped away from the microphone, leaving a room charged with unsaid words, my heart a battlefield of vulnerability and defiance. I wished the best for her future, yet I felt the chains of our shared past bind around my heart. Distracted guests resumed their conversations, the air filled with chatter, laughter, and decisive rebirth. Yet I stood alone, ensnared in the remnants of a love that, while beautiful, fell victim to deeper betrayals. A revelation I dared not share with the world yet felt vital to recognize. The ceremony continued onward, yet for me everything hung precariously, teetering on the edge of clarity and chaos, the tension still palpable in an atmosphere now charged with unrelenting emotional turmoil. It was as if the very air around me thickened, charged with an unspoken tension, a hushed electricity that buzzed in my ears. As the ceremony came to a close and the officiant's voice filled the intimate space with promises and oaths, dread sank deep into my gut. I could feel the weight of every hopeful glance that the guests cast towards the newlyweds, but all I could think about was the delicate thread of a secret that had begun to unravel in my mind, each tug revealing a knot I had long chosen to ignore. The reception hall had transformed from a place of celebration to a backdrop of impending doom as the laughter cascaded around me. I found myself at the bar, nursing the same glass of whiskey for way too long, staring into it as though the murky depths held answers for the questions writhing in my mind. My ex-girlfriend Shaylee, now glowing in her ivory gown, caught my eye, her laughter ringing out like a mocking echo, too sweet, too triumphant, and too incongruent with the gnawing sensation festering in my chest. I couldn't shake the unease that encapsulated me. It felt almost physical, like shadows lurking behind my back waiting to reveal themselves. The best man, Sam, my old friend and Shaylee's brother, approached me, his anxious expression betraying the joy he was meant to embody. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale," he murmured, genuine concern lacing his voice. I half-heartedly forced a smile, and before I could respond, I noticed her in the background, a woman I had hoped to avoid, Alina, Shaylee's college roommate. I had seen her a few times since the fallout, her presence a reminder of late-night confessions and the shared bond of secrets. She smiled at me, but there was something deeper in her gaze, a flicker of apprehension that sent a shiver down my spine. I realized then that the stories had always danced between us, cloaked in hushed tones and sideways glances. Did she know? Despite my growing dread, my heart raced with curiosity as she glided over in her elegant navy dress, her waves of dark hair brushing against her shoulders. "Hey, I thought I should check in on you," she said, her tone light, but there was an edge to it that hinted at complexity. "This must be tough." I nodded, unsure of my next words, but before I could articulate the turmoil twisting in my gut, she leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper amidst the cheerful clinking of glasses. "There's something I need to tell you and you need to listen. It's about Shaylee and James." The world around me blurred into insignificance, the merriment fading to a thick hum as those two names shuddered through me like cold steel. "What about them?" The tremor in her voice made me uneasy. "Things aren't what they seem. There are layers to Shaylee's happiness that you might not know about, secrets she kept even from me." A part of me was screaming to turn away, to abandon this conversation and retreat into the void of whiskey-soaked forgetfulness, yet another part, more primal and desperate, urged me to hear her out. "What secrets?" Alina glanced around as if the very walls had ears. Then bearing down, she confessed, "James and Shaylee's relationship wasn't just built on love. There were moments, dark moments, that you were blissfully unaware of. You have to understand she was struggling, and this isn't just gossip. I wished I didn't know any of this, but I do. James wasn't the only one she sought comfort from when things got tough." My heart plummeted. "What are you saying? 2 weeks ago, Shaylee kissed someone else." During the final days of planning, she leaned on an old friend when she couldn't trust anyone else. Someone from her past. A torrent of emotions swept over me, rage, hurt, a hollow emptiness. "You're lying." "No, I promise." "Why would she risk everything?" I interrupted, the tightness in my throat threatening to choke me. "I don't think she wanted to," Alina continued, her voice straining against the reality she was revealing. "Shaylee was always a creature of the heart, open, desperate even when faced with overwhelming pressure. She needed reassurance, and during moments of doubt, that's when it happened. As soon as I found out, I warned her to fix things with you, but she was already lost in the chaos." The dance floor blurred before me, the vivid colors blending into chaos, laughter transforming into a cacophonous dishonesty that threatened to suffocate me. How could she betray what we had built together? We were vibrant, alive in our love, and yet here I was, stripped bare, grappling with a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew. "But she's marrying him today," I said flatly, wheezing as the truth morphed into relentless questions. "Is this why she called it off between us?" "There's more," Alina said, hesitating, her eyes remorseful. "James didn't just become the safety net, he tangled her further into lies, but he's not someone who truly loves her either. He never was. This wedding, it's like a cage, a facade for their broken spirits." I forced my eyes away from Alina, the depth of betrayal tightening its grip around my heart. Everything we'd shared, every stolen glance, intimate touch, and lingering promise now felt tainted, refracted through the lens of her broken trust. A dissonance played in my mind, one that couldn't be undone, one that was too ugly to ignore. And as my vision faded into a blur, the weight of the moment pressed heavily against my chest. I knew then that I was standing at the precipice of heartache and fury, where the love I had once held dear began to crumble. Would this horrible revelation change everything, or perhaps it was the beginning of reclaiming what had defined us? In the sea of grinning faces, a single desperate thought anchored me. If she was making this colossal mistake, maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to break free from her deceptive chains. My heart raced as I contemplated my next move on this devastating whirlwind of loyalty and betrayal. The air around me felt thick, as if the weight of unspoken words hung suspended between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. I stood there, the center of a whirlwind, the best man at a wedding that shouldn't have felt like a homecoming but instead stung like a betrayal. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the cheerful faces encircling me, they all felt like a cruel facade masking the turmoil that raged inside. It was supposed to be a day of joy, yet all I could feel was the tremor of loss underneath the laughter, each chuckle echoing back to memories that now felt tainted by disillusionment. The moment I spotted her walking down the aisle, something broke within me. She looked radiant, of course, all brides do. But the electricity from that familiar smile, that same smile that had once entranced me, now sparked a deeper angst. It reminded me of nights we spent tangled in each other's arms, whispering dreams into the darkness. I could see it now, shimmering past behind a veil of sorrow, the lightness of those moments overshadowed by my own jarring reality. She was dressed in white, a beautiful gown that underlined the purity of her new beginning, yet I felt as if I had been pushed into the shadows of my own heart, a spectator to a world I used to inhabit, now piece by piece, slipping away from my grasp. As the ceremony approached its climax, with words that once may have filled my heart with warmth, I found them now to be cruel and accusatory, slicing through me like a sharp blade. I felt the urge to stand up, the anger pounding in my chest, clamoring for release. The vows spoken were a bittersweet melody, a reminder of promises we once made and dreams we shared. It felt like being in the eye of a storm, motionless, while the events around me spun violently out of control. And then it happened. The moment when certainty shifted into madness, when the air went stale, and my tightly coiled composure began to unravel before all the gathered witnesses. I don't know what possessed me, fueled by an uncontainable rage and heartbreak. All I knew was that I needed to confront her. So I took an unsteady step toward her. Each step felt weighed down by 1,000 memories, but the throb in my chest compelled me forward. It was an instinct rooted deep within, an urgent call to lay bare the tempest swelling within me. Why, I found myself whispering, yet the word carried the weight of 1,000 thoughts burgeoning with implications and accusations. I had wanted to believe that the past was just that, past, but confronted with the stark reality of what lay ahead, questions I had buried surged back raw and unbridled. Why him, why now? The music faded into an anxious silence as the eyes of all the guests turned toward us, like moths drawn to the flicker of a flame. I felt exposed, vulnerable, yet reveling in an overwhelming need for closure, desperate for answers that could bring peace to my chaotic heart. There she stood, frozen, the laughter around us quickly wafting away, sucked into the void of my singular focus. The fight ignited within her as if I had pulled the pin on her emotional grenade. I anticipated anger. What I didn't expect was the vulnerability in her eyes. Because I needed to move on, she shot back, defiance lacing her tone, yet beneath it was the tremor of buried sorrow. You've moved on, haven't you? Her voice cut through the tension like glass shattering, and it struck me I hadn't. Moving on doesn't mean erasing what we shared, I barked, the words spilling out like venom. You can't just pretend that everything we built together was nothing. It meant something, damn it. The truth spilled from my lips, raw and unfiltered. I felt the heat rising, leaving a trail of regret in its wake. My voice had risen, a desperate call not only for her but almost for myself as I longed to reclaim the fragments of the past that still beckoned from the corners of my heart. Her eyes narrowed, fierce and proud. You think this is easy for me? When I look at him I see a future, she paused, but the inkling of doubt swam across her face. But I'll always see the past. I'm scared, okay. Scared of what? Of being happy. The bitterness in my voice was palpable, suffocating, but the longing for understanding overshadowed it. Of losing myself in the past with you, of repeating our mistakes. The admission hung precariously between us, an invisible thread binding us together yet threatening to snap at any moment. The confession unraveled the threads of anger, replacing them with a heartache I hadn't anticipated. A rush of understanding pulled at my heartstrings. It was a collision of emotions so powerful that it layered every word we exchanged with unspoken histories. The last wisps of her defenses crumbled as tears shimmered in her eyes, reflecting back the very heart of our tumultuous love. You tried to let go, didn't you? She whispered, almost a realization echoing in silence. In that instant, all anger melted away, leaving a raw honesty hanging in the air. I could see it clearly now, the fragile beauty of our love, marred by the burdens of unmet expectations and unhealed wounds. Everything I had held on to with such ferocity began to unravel, and I recognized the truth in her admission. Beneath this enthralling dance of blame lingered an undeniable bond that refused to vanish. I tried. I finally said, my voice softer now, the storm within subsiding against the tide of understanding. But the echoes of what we were will always linger, won't they? And maybe that's okay, she replied, a tentative smile breaking through her tears. Maybe that's all they can ever be now. And in that moment I finally understood the beauty in our shared complicity, our love turned bittersweet yet infinitely precious. A new chapter awaited her, one I had reluctantly come to accept, but we stood intertwined still, cloaked in confusion and bittersweet longing. The clash of emotions, once a painful cacophony, softened into a delicate harmony woven from the threads of our shared past. Acceptance is not the kind of revelation that strikes like lightning. It creeps in, patiently weaving itself through the fabric of your thoughts until it finds a comfortable place to settle. I sit in the back of the chapel, the chatter of excited guests washing over me like a distant storm, muffled, somewhat surreal. I wanted to be angry, to feel the righteous flame of betrayal judging every smile and laugh in the room, but there's a distinct weariness in my heart that softens that rage, replacing it with something else, something far more unsettling: clarity. The pews are filled with faces, many of whom I recognize, friends, mutual acquaintances, a few faces that belong to her family. They're all here to celebrate a union, to witness vows that on my part feel inherently tainted. She has moved on, she has found love again. As I look up at the altar, the reality of it twists my gut rather than raises my fists. Every flower meticulously arranged. Every breath held in anticipation. Those joys are meant for someone else now, a stranger in a way. And yet her laughter stays with me, echoing like a haunting refrain in empty spaces of my memories, reminding me not only of the good, but of the intricate dance of shadows that had once entwined our lives. I clasp my hands, feeling the coolness of metal on my knuckles, my best man's cufflinks, a last-minute gift I imagined would signify my unwavering support for her new happiness. The irony isn't lost on me. I have become the vessel of my own heartache, the reluctant advisor to a love I no longer belong to. This is it, standing on the precipice of acceptance, a perilous edge where bitterness meets understanding. All those years I dreamt of crafting a life with her, painting our futures in vibrant colors. Now I'm surrounded by muted tones, obscured by grief for a love that has faded into memory. Accepting it isn't surrendering. Instead, it feels like peeling away the layers of my own resentment, each layer a fragment of past dreams and hopes now rich with uncertainty. I think back to the day she ended it, how with those final words she drew a line in the sand. I never thought a mere handful of syllables could feel so final, so definitive. Yet here I am, a spectator in the narrative we once co-authored, watching her slip effortlessly into a new chapter. The pastor begins reading vows. I can't help but notice the quiver in her voice as she promises to cherish in sickness and in health, to honor and to keep. And with each promise, I feel the walls that I had erected around my heart begin to crumble, revealing the raw truth beneath. Her happiness can exist without me, and it does. It's terrifying yet liberating. I think of my mother's words when heartbreak first found me. Honey, love is not a finite resource. Just because it didn't work with one person doesn't mean it's over for you. At the time, I rolled my eyes, dismissed her wisdom as a tired cliché, but with every resonating syllable she offers today, her wisdom wraps around me like a warm blanket. There's both comfort and challenge in the thought that love can regenerate, can fashion itself anew, and suddenly I'm face to face with an honesty I've been avoiding. I feel love not as a burden, but as a commitment to my own happiness. Humans are not created to suffer alone. In my heart's desolation, I mapped every crevice carved by her absence, but instead I should have been open to new experiences, casting nets wide to explore the depths of what relationships can become. Each memory with her is a puzzle piece that may not fit anywhere else, but it doesn't ruin the whole picture. They reflect light, sometimes in shadows, sometimes illuminating paths I could take. The vows continue, and I can feel real love thrumming in the air, vibrant and alive. The emotion of this moment is impossible to ignore, shifting my focus from a fractured past to the uncharted future that lies ahead. I realize acceptance doesn't mean relinquishing hope for my own love story. Rather, it's a recognition that happiness can be found in unexpected forms and through channels I haven't yet explored. Her joy doesn't negate my own. It instead empowers me to consider rebuilding, to redefine what love means to me. As she glances over at me, I catch her eye and give a slight, genuine nod. No longer do I see an ex, I see a person I treasured, a friend whose laughter adorned my life even with the turbulence now clouded between us. In that moment I finally dismissed the notion of resentment, understanding it was merely a shroud for my own hurt. The acceptance floods over me like cleansing rain, washing away bitterness, and in its place I can almost feel hope budding quietly but decisively. This is the crux of moving forward, letting go of ownership over what we once had, allowing others' happiness to guide the heart in unexpected directions. I breathe in deeply, feeling as if layers of the past are lifting away, exposing new ground beneath my feet, ground that remains fertile despite the drought of discontent I had allowed to take hold. I'm liberated not just from her but from the shadows lingering around every corner of my spirit. As she speaks the words that bind her to her new love, I can finally smile without a trace of heartache. I am learning that love, with all its complexities and conundrums, is a vast ocean, and I'm but a ship ready to navigate toward new horizons. It's time to drop anchors of the past and set sail toward the promise of the unknown, charting a course where love is celebrated, be it lost or found. My acceptance of this will guide me. The love I've known has transformed into a compass leading our separate lives forward, and I find resolve in wishing her every happiness. I release my grip on the past, embrace the unfolding future, and with it comes the resilience to love anew. As I stood there, pinned between the love of memories long past and the reality of a future I had yet to fully comprehend, I felt the weight of a lifetime compressing within my chest. The air was thick with unsaid words. The notes of polite laughter rang hollow, their brightness stark against my veil of confusion. The wedding reception, a splendid affair adorned with an abundance of bright blooms and twinkling lights, felt like a high-stakes play in which I had unwittingly found myself cast as the jester. There was a time when being here, amidst smiles and toasts, would have ignited a spark of joy within me. Yet now the only embers burning were those of heartache and bittersweet nostalgia. I thought back to the moments we had once shared, the stolen glances and the soft whispers that danced between us like fireflies on a summer night. How many times had we woven dreams of the future, believing our love to be an indestructible force, a sanctuary against the ravages of time. Yet here I was, draped in the remnants of our history, watching as she exchanged vows with another man, a new beginning forged on the ashes of our once bright flame. "Congratulations," I said, raising my glass like a reluctant soldier betrayed by his own comrades. Each toast felt like a masked betrayal, every clink of glasses echoed with the crack of promises unfulfilled. As I watched her smile bloom with newfound love, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider, a ghost wandering through the walls of our past. And yet there was a flicker of warmth, a glimmer of hope that clawed its way through the veil of my sorrow. It whispered to me, nudging my heart awake. Perhaps this moment was not merely an end, but rather the harbinger of a new beginning. The stories we crafted together would not dissolve into oblivion. Instead, they might forge a bridge to something greater, something healing. I shook off the shadows of doubt that curled around my mind. This was a pivotal crossroads, not just for her but for me too. I had spent so long engulfed in the chaos of our unraveling that I had almost forgotten who I was without her. The friendship we had built alongside our love had been neglected, buried under the weight of unfulfilled expectations and miscommunication. But a new trajectory beckoned, one that could allow me to forge peace with the echoes of our shared past. "Hey, can I steal you for a moment?" I approached her gently, my voice finding its footing amidst the clamor of laughter and clinking utensils. She looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes like a distant star. For a heartbeat I thought I saw the glimmer of recognition, the ghosts of us mingling with the realities we faced. "Sure," she replied, a tremor of hesitation lacing her response. To step away from the crowd was to step into the unknown, but I knew I needed this moment. I needed to speak words that had been lodged in my throat for far too long. We found solace in the garden tucked behind the reception space where the sounds of revelry faded and it was just us, awash in the coolness of dusk. "Look," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to say this without sounding futile, but I am genuinely happy for you. I can see it in your eyes, you deserve this." The sincerity of my words hung in the air, thick with an opportunity for dialogue that had long been elusive. Her eyes softened, and I caught a glimpse of the girl I had loved so fiercely, a spark ignited against the backdrop of the life she was starting anew. Thank you, she murmured, her voice wavering, a delicate balance between gratitude and something more profound. We stood in that silence, an unassuming acknowledgement of the past swirling between us like aged wine, its bitter notes mellowed by the sweetness of acceptance. What about you? She asked, with the curiosity that had always defined our bond. What's next for you? The question rattled something deep within me. I had built walls around my heart, convinced that picking up the pieces of my life without her would lead to a futile existence. Yet standing there, I realized the possibility of a new definition unfurling before me. Acceptance didn't mean abandonment of all we had shared. Instead, it was a reimagining of love not as a singular consuming force, but as a spectrum of connection that could include friendship, respect, and mutual encouragement. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I think I want to start exploring what makes me happy again. I've spent so much time tethered to the past, to what we had, that I forgot to look forward. Maybe it's time to embrace the unknown. Her smile was hesitant but genuine, a reflection of the journey we had traversed together. You've always had a good heart, she said softly. I hope you find it in yourself to open up to happiness again. In that moment, something profound passed between us. We stood at a threshold, no longer shackled by regrets or haunted by unspoken wishes, but rather poised to step into a future where both of our dreams could exist, separate yet parallel. The journey ahead would not be without its challenges, but I felt lighter, unburdened by the emotions that had once trapped me in a painful loop. As I raised my glass to her one last time, a renewed sense of purpose surged through me. To fresh starts, I declared, that echoing clarity reverberating deep within my soul, and to bridges, however fragile they may be. The truth weighed heavier than I could articulate. Perhaps it was here, amid all this joy and the bittersweet ache of the past, that we could grow separately yet together, a testament to love in all its forms. We had witnessed the beauty of our relationship, and now our ability to release its grasp signaled not defeat but a resolute step towards something undiscovered. In the fading light, I began to understand. We would always share these memories, woven together like threads in a tapestry, and that connection could transform into something new. A new beginning beckoned, one where old shadows no longer defined us but simply reminded us of the depth and complexity of our shared journey.